So hello everybody who is watching us. We are here to have one more of our online gatherings of young Theosophists, and it's the first one of 2022. So I'm very excited to be here and introduce our speaker. We are going to have a more traditional model of meeting today. We are having basically a talk, and then at the end we are going to have comments and questions, but it's not going to be in YouTube. So if someone is watching live, you can come here in Zoom and join us if you want. So the talk today is by Seth Edwards. He's a member of the Theosophical Society in America, and he's also the secretary of his lodge in Washington, D.C. And he's going to talk about Light on the Path. That is a book that he loves a lot. So I think it will be a very precious opportunity to listen to him. I have to say that Seth is someone that I've met only in the internet, but he very quickly become a very key presence, in my opinion, in this new movement that we are doing of trying to bring together young Theosophists around the world. And he very quickly become a very good friend, even though we didn't meet in person yet. So I'm very happy to introduce him. And this topic is very important to Seth, and it's also very important to me. It's one of my favorite theosophical books, Light on the Path. And it's very small, very esoteric. It was even praised by Madame Blavatsky, and perhaps one of the best tools that we have for practical theosophy. So Seth, thank you for accepting this invitation to talk, and you can have the time.
Thank you, Raphael, for the introduction and for organizing all these. They wouldn't exist without. So thank you. So the topic today, as Raphael said, is Light on the Path. And before I begin any kind of intellectual line of thinking or conversation or anything, I like to ask myself, why does it matter? Because a lot of times in daily life, we kind of find ourselves thinking or talking about things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And I think if we can cut that down as much as possible, it'll help us do the things that we should be doing, I believe. So Light on the Path is a small spiritual book with a collection of concise rules that kind of detail the stepping stones that we take on the spiritual path, spiritual life. And I like to ask, why does that in and of itself matter? I think that it matters because most of us as human beings are kind of thrown into the world without a real concrete knowledge of what we're doing and why. If we're lucky, we have parents that kind of, put us on the right track. But if we step back and think about it, even if we have good parents, they, just like us, are human beings thrown into this world without really knowing what they're doing or why. And we're just trying to figure it out as we go. And also, I think that if we watch the pattern of our lives, we see that at different stages, from childhood to adolescence to, young adulthood, whatever it is, we think that at that moment, we see things as they really are, and we know what we're doing. But every progressive stage, we realize the stage before, we didn't really know what we were doing, and the things that we thought were important aren't really that important. And if we watch that pattern and we're honest with ourselves, we know that right here, right now, at this moment, we're in a similar situation. We will reach another stage, and the things that we hold dear to us right now aren't going to matter all that much in the future. Some things always will, of course, but other things won't. So I believe that Light on the Path offers a framework that we can use to see the world in a more realistic way so that we can do what we came here to do as human beings. And I don't think that there are many other books like this that are as concise and unmanipulative as Light on the Path is. Excuse me. So I'll talk about how my perception of the book changed over time and how it's the first theosophical book I ever came to. And I hope this is helpful to at least some person somewhere, mildly interesting. So The first sentence of Light on the Path is that these rules are written for all disciples. Attend us to them. And this may not seem like a lot. It's kind of easy to skip over this. It doesn't look all that important, but I think there's a lot here. And this first part of the sentence where it says that these rules are written for all disciples, I think that's very important, because it doesn't say that these rules are written for crazy people like me that are obsessed with Light on the Path. It doesn't say they're written for people in the West that are trying to learn more about the East. It says it's written for all disciples. And I think that implies that these rules are not an arbitrary creation. It's not one particular path that you can take. These rules, I believe, are pointing at an underlying reality that exists within the structure of the universe, and that they're describing something similar to the law of gravity or the law of attraction, and that these rules exist whether or not we believe them or think about them or have ever heard of them. So I think that kind of gives scope to the work, and we know what we're getting involved with here. These things are going to happen eventually, whether or not we're on board with them. And then the second part of that is for us to attend to them. And I think that's also important, because Light on the Path is something that we have to attend to. And we can think about what we do when we attend to somebody we love. We spend time with them, we try to understand them, and we try and think about them at different times in our lives, even when they're not around. We've got to do the same thing with Light on the Path if we want to take it seriously. It's not just an intellectual understanding. Memorizing it helps, I'm sure, but it's not all there is to it. So we've got to learn how to make it our own somehow. One thing that I like to do is I'll set an alarm that goes off periodically, and when that alarm goes off, I'll try and think of, at that exact moment when the alarm goes off, what rule of Light on the Path do I need to work on? And oftentimes one particular rule will pop into my mind, and I know that in my daily life, that's what I'm failing at that moment, and I need to start working on that. So maybe that's helpful, maybe that's not. And the text begins with 4 unnumbered rules. And I apologize, I've talked about these in the youth forum before, but I think they're very important. And we have a small amount of people here, and I'm sure that's because I'm extremely boring. So I'm sorry for talking about the same thing again. It's going to be boring maybe, but these first 4 unnumbered rules are said to be kind of an overview of the entire work. So if we can live according to these first 4 rules, all the other rules within the book will kind of fall into place on their own. And the first one is that before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears. And I think that for the bulk of humanity, myself included, this is what we need to work on all the time at every day in our lives. Because what this says to me is that if any negative emotion is within our awareness, at that moment, we are inherently not seeing things as they actually are. So for instance, if someone has made us angry and, we want to say something mean or explode on them because we're angry, we could take a step back and we could see that the reason we're angry is only because we do not see things as they actually are. And if we were to see things as they were, there would be no reason to explode or be angry or any of it. It would all melt away. So every negative emotion that we feel, whether it's depression or fear or anything else, it's based on an illusion that we're not seeing things as they really are. And right now in humanity, emotions are a large part of who we are. So we have a lot of work. I especially have a lot of work in that regard. The second unnumbered rule is that before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. And the ear in this context, the way that I perceive it, and there's of course always deeper ways to perceive these things than I can see, far deeper. The ear in this context represents our soul, and hearing represents the contact of buddhi, which I know everyone here probably already knows, but just to go over it, in the Theosophical view, there's a set constitution of man that from lowest to top goes the physical body, and then the emotions, and then the lower mental, the words I'm using to speak, concrete thoughts. Well, that's the higher above that is the higher mental, so looking for patterns and archetypes, things like that. And above that is buddhi, which is the source of all the higher emotions, such as unselfish love, and it's also the source of common sense and perceiving things as they really are. And it's the direction that humanity is trying to go right now. Everything up to this point has been automatic and unfolds naturally. From here on, it's on us. We've got to learn how to make buddhi the main operating force of our lives. So before our soul can hear buddhi, can understand something that's above the personality, it must have lost its sensitiveness. And that's saying that before we can be in touch with something higher than our personalities, we've got to purify ourselves, whether that's through meditation or, just trying to do things in the right way. But I believe that's what this rule is telling us. And Unnumbered Rule 3 says that before the voice can speak in the presence of the master, it must have lost the power to it. The presence of the master in this context, again, I believe represents buddhi. And the voice speaking represents our ability to help people. So we can try and help people without the influence of buddhi, of course. But we're always subject to fail when that happens. And we can do our best. That's okay. But if we want to help in a way that we know always hits the mark, we need buddhi to be the underlying motivation. And before we can do that, we must have lost the power to wound. And I think the best way to do that is from when we wake up to when we go to sleep. Our motivation has to be to help the people around us. Because if that's truly our motivation, it'll be impossible for us to hurt other people. Even if they hurt us, the idea of hurting them back won't even cross our minds. So I think this is giving us a hint on how we can help develop that buddhi to be the dominant force in our lives. And the last unnumbered rule is the one that I believe takes us out of the realm of humanity into something more than human. And it's that before the soul can stand in the presence of the master, its feet must be washed in the blood of the heart. And before I talk about it, I'll read another quote from Mabel Collins and a commentary she wrote on Light of the Path called As the Flower Grows. And it goes, "This standing, mentioned in this unnumbered rule, is the power of steadfastness, remaining firm and unwavering in the highest place his soul can reach. There is no higher test of capacity in ordinary human life." So this is saying before we can remain aware in that presence of buddhi, before we can transcend what it means to be a human with a personality that, we constantly think it's what we are, our feet must be washed in the blood of the heart. And here I believe that feet represents our personality, and the blood of the heart represents expunging selfishness from within us. And I'll talk about that more here. So a little later on in the book, it tells us to seek in our hearts the source of evil and expunge them. And when I first read this, I was 17 or 18, and I had no idea what the source of evil was, and I wanted to know. But I wasn't intelligent enough to figure it out and see the pattern, I suppose. It wasn't until I found another copy of Light on the Path that Mabel Collins essentially rewrote the book, and she talked to people that had been studying the book and found out what tripped them up, what didn't make sense. And she reworded things so that they did make sense. And she also renamed the book as an essay on transcendentalism. If anyone wants that book, let me know and I can send it to you. But this longer quote beneath it comes from an excerpt of a commentary on seeking in our hearts the source of evil and expunging it. And it helped me a lot. I really love this quote. The source of evil arises from a mixture of two mental errors, which become part of ourselves, a veritable second nature: the sense of separateness, the sense of superiority. These two produce self-respect, which in common minds stands for virtue, but which is in fact the source of evil, or rather, to be more accurate, of limitation. And I love how strong this is, how direct this is written. And I think this is something that we can see in ourselves and around us every day. The source of evil is everywhere within us and the people we see walking down the street. It's really easy to see on someone's face, when they feel separate or superior and when they have self-respect. And it is the source of evil, but it's also not the end of the world. And what we're doing as humans here is learning how to transcend that and become something more, because the sense of separateness and superiority, we need it for a moment in order to become what we are. And then we have to go beyond it. So even though it is a source of evil, it's not absolute evil, and we will grow beyond it. And knowing that it exists, it helps us to do that. So now that my talk is over halfway over, the first rule of Light on the Path, part 1, is to kill out ambition, yet work as those who are ambitious. And I think this is pretty straightforward. It's telling us to work as though we had a selfish interest in the world and we want to get things done, Yet our motivation for that is not for ourselves, but to help other people. And that's the theme of all Light on the Path. We're learning how to help other people. And the second rule is to kill out the desire of life, yet respect life as those do who desire it. And when I first read this, I thought it was metaphorical, to kill out the desire of having a life well lived, of, being able to look back on our lives and say that was exciting and meaningful. But I think this is more literal than that even. I think we're supposed to kill out the actual desire to live, as terrible as that sounds. And at any moment in our lives, if for the greater good we need to die, we need to be willing to do that. We need to not be attached to, having a physical life, yet respect that physical life. So, eat healthily and try and make our bodies survive as long as they can. But again, just so that we can help other people. And, we shouldn't do things like chain smoke or other dangerous things for no reason. The third rule is to kill out the desire of comfort, yet be happy as those are who live for happiness. And so in the modern world, comfort is a very large part of our lives. At any moment in time, we can, pull out our cell phone and go the route of escapism, which is comfort, and it kind of makes us weak. But, I think we need to be able to survive without comfort. It's maybe obvious. And I really like the second part of this rule where it says, be as happy as those are who live for happiness. And again, the motivation for that is not so that we're happy, for ourselves, but being happy allows us to help other people better. And it's our duty to be happy so that we can better help the people around us. That's something I need to work on. Also, this rule is alluding that happiness is not dependent upon the external world. It's something that we create internally. So we could imagine most of us have something that we really want to happen. A greatest wish or whatever it is. And you can imagine how happy would you be if that were to happen right here, right now, and the happiness that you feel. You just created a reflection of that happiness in yourself, thinking about it. And in the same way, you can take that reflection and make it real for you right here and right now. It's just it's a skill, learning how to use our will to create emotions so that we can better help the people around us. And then we come to this quote here, which says, to live neither in the present nor the future, but in the eternal. And I like this one a lot too, because it contradicts the New Age. They're always telling us to live in the now. But I think that's kind of shallow and superficial. Because there's more than just the now, There's things that have existed, there's things that will exist, but within this thread of everything that's ever been and will be, there's the eternal. It's here right now at this moment, listening to, a boring lecture, and it's going to be there forever. What is that thing? It's what we need to, be the main source of consciousness within us. And I think it is consciousness itself. It's that thing that's always the observer and never the observed. It's always going to be there, and we need to somehow learn to make that the source of our existence, I think. The fifth rule is to kill out all sense of separateness, yet stand alone and isolated. And this sounds kind of bleak because we're saying we kill out something and we're alone and isolated, and it doesn't sound very nice. But I think a better way to say the beginning of this is just feel your connection with everything that exists, because we are all intricately connected. Nothing exists in a vacuum. We live because other things around us live. So just know that you're connected with everything. But don't depend on anything but our own consciousness. I think it's okay that we connect with others and lean on them. It's a big part of being human. But I think we have to know that even if the people that we hold dearest to us disappear from sight, even for the rest of our lives, we're going to survive and we'll be okay, and they will too. Nothing's ever really gone. I think it's just saying that, we have to rely on ourselves. It's a part of being human. The sixth rule is to kill out the desire for sensation, yet learn from sensation and observe it. And like the first rule on ambition, I think this one's kind of straightforward and obvious. We're trying to live a spiritual life. We probably shouldn't become gluttons of pleasure and, just seeking self-gratification. Yet we do have to learn from sensation because it's an intrinsic part of being human. I mean, even sitting in front of your laptop, there are sensations, sounds and feelings. The seventh rule is to kill out the hunger for growth, yet be eagerly anxious to open our soul to the air. And I added this longer quote beneath it because the first time that I read it, I was really confused by it. And I'll explain why. It goes, but it must be the eternal that draws forth your strength and beauty, not desire for growth. In one case, you develop in the luxuriance of purity. In the other, you harden by the forceful passion for personal stature. And the reason this really confused me at first is because I was so completely encased within the forceful passion for personal stature that even someone bluntly telling me that it was wrong, as this sentence here does, I couldn't see it, and I was really confused. What do you mean I shouldn't be having a forceful passion for personal stature? But I believe that's wrong because of that fourth unnumbered rule, where it says the source of evil is a sense of separateness, superiority, and self-respect. And if we're trying to force ourselves to grow for personal stature, that implies an underlying awareness of separateness and self-respect and feeling superior from something for whatever reason. And that is the source of evil. So even though maybe at certain points in our lives, we need that motivation, for stature, whatever it is, to go out and do things, but eventually we need to grow beyond that. And now we come to what's called the pleasure of the occultist, which sounds kind of strange, but I think it's important to note that it's not all doom and gloom and metaphorical killing of things within us. There's also things that we're working towards, things that we want, things that are infinitely beautiful. And so I put all 6 of these rules here on one slide because they're all connected and they all kind of intertwine. The top line here, rules 9 and 13, apply to Manas. The middle 10 and 14 apply to Buddhi, and the bottom 2, 11 and 15, apply to Atma. And these correlations exist all within Light on the Path. Different rules apply to others and things of that nature. It's a lot of pattern recognition, and I really like that about it. But on the left here, you see that it says desire only that which is within us, only that which is beyond us, and only that which is unattainable. Yet on the right, it also tells us to desire power, peace, and possessions. And I believe that what it's saying is that this power, this peace, and these possessions that we desire are also within us, beyond us, and unattainable. Because we're only desiring one thing. You only say desire only something if you're after one thing. So all 6 of these descriptions are different ways of saying the same thing. And I think it's also good to note that, because it sounds kind of bad to desire power, but the power we're after is just the ability to help the people around us. And peace is another way of saying unselfish love. And again, we don't want that for ourselves, but we want that unselfish love in order to help the people around us. And the possessions that we desire above all, it's wisdom and knowledge, essentially, because other than the connections that we make with the people around us, when we die, we don't take anything else with us except for the wisdom that we gain here. And although those connections with other people do survive, we never own or possess other people, thank goodness. So the possessions that we desire above all are wisdom. The 17th rule is to seek out the way, and then the next 3 rules are qualifiers of that. It says to seek the way by retreating within, seek it by advancing boldly without, and seek it not by any one road. And rules 18 and 19, to seek the way by retreating within and advancing without. I think those are 2 things we can do at the same time. We can be operating in the world around us while also trying to retreat within and see things from a deeper view within us. And this 20th rule, to seek the way not by any one road, is definitely written for people like me that will try to take light on the path and turn it into a Bible. But the way is not found by any one road. Not even the Bible is a Bible. We can't take any one thing and run with it forever. We have to be open to different perceptions and ways of seeing things. And the last rule of part 1, which is also the last rule that I'll mention here, is to look for the flower to bloom in the silence that follows the storm, not till then. And I'm glad that this is the last rule, because it's a very hopeful one and optimistic. What it's saying is that when everything falls apart around us, and we're literally or metaphorically crying in a ball on the floor, we need that storm in order to grow. And that flower of spiritual growth is never going to flower without it. So in those horrible moments in our lives when everything is falling apart and the world is burning, we know that it is an absolutely vital part of the spiritual path, and that the storm will end and there will be peace after it, and a flower of spiritual understanding will come every time. If you look back in your life, every single time those storms end and something better comes every time. And I think it's nice to note that after the flower blooms, eventually there's fruit too. And the first part of Light on the Path is all about how do we train ourselves and operate in such a way that we can be able to help. And then the second part of Light on the Path is about actually helping. It's about the fruit. So I hope that was mildly interesting, and that concludes my talk.
Thank you very much for this talk. I found it very clear, very deep. And just like Light in the Path, really, it normally is some sort of, punch in our face in some ways. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. And now we are going to have a moment in which we can discuss, make comments, make questions. And I will stop the transmission in YouTube so people can feel more comfortable to exchange ideas. So if someone is watching on YouTube Live and wants to join us in Zoom right now, I just posted the link. So thank you for watching us.